Welcome to the Advertising Forum. Today's episode is brought to you by InMobi, where we're covering advanced mobile advertising through attention metrics.
In our third episode, we dove into the power of attention metrics in mobile advertising. If you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, we highly recommend catching up. Returning for this episode are Mark Guldimann, founder of Adelaide, and Richard O'Sullivan, Vice President of Global Revenue and Strategy at InMobi. Welcome to the Advertising Forum.
Cheers, guys.
Can you share examples where attention metrics have, significantly improved mobile advertising outcomes for brands? This is directed at you, Richard. What is your perspective on that, and where has attention metrics actually improved the outcomes that you see with some of your advertisers?
So for InMobi advertising, it's still early for us in attention metrics. Based on those that joined the last podcast, the reality is that in-app is something that's the next bridge for us to cross, and we're doing so with Adelaide. So we're at the early side of that, but where we've done testing at the moment, we're finding that high attention inventory is generally delivering a 7 times increase on the click-through rate, which, while it's more like a gateway metric right now, but beyond that, we're starting to see significant improvements in reduction in cost per completed view, 40% increase in ad engagement. We're also seeing, greater improvement on the sustainability of campaigns because effectively there's less wastage that's coming through.
I think you're being a little coy, Richard. The InMobi's performance was pretty spectacular. Right? You guys beat benchmarks 80% of the time, and even on the last, it was like 4 out of the 5 things we tested, you guys were above benchmark, and then the 5th one, it was like you're right at benchmark. So if that's like any prediction, like in terms of like where InMobi's media quality is, the performance should be commensurate with that.
Nice work, Richard.
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier that 70% of all spend goes to mobile, and we often get punched back with the large majority of that's walled garden. But I think if you look at the Adelaide metrics, the open web for in-app has surpassed display in a walled garden environment. So I think that's definitely one plus point. And I think our scores when the early stages of video, although we're still in the background on that side of things, were I think very, very good. We're just not released them yet.
Nice. Mark, what challenges do brands face when adopting attention metrics for mobile advertising? How do they overcome these hurdles? You spent the past, I'm going to say nearly a decade, just kind of rattling the cages saying, attention metrics, we need to change the way that we're all thinking about advertising in general at a very macro level. So what challenges are these brands facing?
So I think you can put the challenges into 3 buckets. The first is proving outcomes. The second is the challenge of actually measuring it in-app, which is specific to in-app, and sort of what Richard talked about in the last podcast with regards to the SDK. The third challenge is just realigning everybody's incentives around quality and value instead of just straight cost. So, with regards to proving outcomes, like it's a challenge for every advertiser, but it's a well-trodden path, right? You can do anything from a correlation analysis to like a real RCT test, but we encourage everybody who is adopting any type of new metric, even attention or whatever, to do this kind of test and understand incrementality and if this new way of doing things is actually more performant than the old way and is not just a shiny new thing. So I think that is something that's been solved before, but it's still a challenge every advertiser needs to face. With regards to the sort of the specific measurement inside of in-app, the work that we've been doing with InMobi to enable the measurement of media quality through the lens of attention metrics is going to solve that, right? Like we're really, really excited to bring this measurement to market with InMobi and to help advertisers have more transparency into that media quality. So that's the second bucket. The third one is the toughest, right? The third one of actually understanding how to unwind these incentives and how to make sure that you're not getting, you might tell your agency that you want quality, but then you tell them they got to reduce CPMs by 10% every year. Now, that's the measurable metric, right? That's what how people are going to be behaving. So that is the trickiest one, and it involves going all the way back up to procurement and the CMO, and educating them about like, hey, it's possible now to measure quality. And I think that that's actually exciting to a lot of procurement folks and a lot of CFOs of brands.
Looking ahead, how do you foresee attention metrics shaping the future of mobile advertising and actual user engagement? Richard, would love for you to hit this one first.
Yeah, I think we already talked about the fact that there's a general challenge with standardization of metrics across channels, formats, and screens, etc. I think the way that we're looking at it is that in-app's going to lead the way on that side of things. It's full screen, it's clutter-free, it's rich data signals. The key thing we have to also factor in is that while we're talking about attention, the less celebrated people within the agencies, the ones that we should celebrate, focus on, and support, are the traders that are trying to reconcile not just attention but sustainability, performance, and 10 other metrics over and above. And I think that's where going back to the question of how do we foresee them shaping, I think the biggest thing is going to be how well we are able to engage the agencies and the advertisers to support them in not just looking at attention metrics, but also looking at how do they align with outcomes upstream, downstream, and with the other metrics that are going on in the environment.
Mark, you are feverishly nodding with what Richard is saying. Let's hear your take.
Oh man, now that you set expectations, I got to say something smart. I think that it's I don't know how to specifically say this. The once the incentives are corrected on the buy side of the network, the buy side of the market, we will start to see better experiences for users, because attention metrics give advertisers permission to pay a price which is commensurate with quality, which then creates an incentive on the sell side of the market for publishers to create more higher quality experiences. And on CTV, that could be fewer ads in a pod. In mobile, that could be fewer ads on a page and less clutter, and just sort of like more high quality, well lit environments for advertising to work. So I think that's really the long-term impact that we'll start to see, especially with regards to user engagement. And users will just have a better experience as the market starts to value those experiences more properly.
So indirectly, your response was a nice catalyst to the question that I'm going to ask next to Richard specifically. Richard, how is the partnership between Adelaide and InMobi helping to advance metrics within the mobile advertising space? When we think through all the attention metrics that you and Mark have been talking about in episode 3 and now in episode 4, let's hear about just how you guys are forging this partnership and just how it's going to make all of us as viewers, as users, and consumers.
Yeah, definitely. I think firstly, it's got touched upon that it's innovative in that there's no one there doing that right now. I think the second thing is it's not just about doing it in a small bucket. It's about creating a scalable, in-app attention solution, because the scale's there, the budgets are there. The AU scoring system leverages our SDK. And I think that's also a second degree, not just the effort that Adelaide's doing to step into this space, which is disproportionate effort to return right now. But once they're able to leverage and pick up the signals in the bid stream, in our SDK, that's going to drive to higher media quality that they're getting. So the results speak for themselves. Our smaller banners, are not going to really cut it globally. But when we start to look at the in-app and we're looking at the full screen interstitials, we're looking at the video formats in that environment. There's a lot of talk in the industry around curation right now, which obviously leveraging attention metrics in order to curate supply that's better suited to certain outcomes. It's all moving in that direction. So I think the key thing for us is taking what sets Adelaide aside from an attention lens, combining it with what InMobi does for the brand advertisers to leverage the SDK's deep signals. These are going to be the combination that's kind of 1 + 1 = 3, if not higher.
Thanks, Richard. Mark, how about from where you're sitting? How are you looking at the partnership and what you guys are building together for the space?
So I think that for us, in-app was always sort of a blind spot. We have, today, AU covers 95% of a typical advertiser's spend. And so the partnership with InMobi was really, it was helpful for us to work with a company that has so much experience in the in-app space, especially in the premium in-app space, in order to launch this product. So I think that their experience and sort of like in the OM SDK and everything that we needed to build and to measure was pivotal to helping us launch this product.
Thank you. So, gentlemen, aside from the advertising forum, what resources or events would you recommend for brands, agencies, people in our industry in order just to learn from, in order to stay ahead of everything taking place within mobile advertising and the attention economy and attention metrics? Where else should people be getting their information?
Well, it's certainly not following me on Twitter because there's only a half dozen people that do that. But I would say like Wayne Blodwell makes a lot of great content. I've been doing a few sort of video podcasts or call them vlogs or whatever with him, which have been a lot of fun. The Attention Council, which is sort of an industry group that we founded with some other vendors, was recently made part of SIM. And so those are always great events. John Watts and the team over there are going to do a great job sort of shepherding TAC into SIM, and it's going to be exciting to see what they're doing. And then you can always follow my co-founder Zach Kubin on LinkedIn. He's always got the best takes on attention metrics.
It's good. How about you, Richard? Where do you get your news?
I mean, to be honest, I tend to look towards the industry white papers. Those kind of you mentioned Wayne on that side of things. There's a number of people in the industry. If you're going to be innovative, then generally it's not codified the information. So if you identify those certain influencers, it's good to follow them first. I think the other trick for me is that when you look at an e-marketer or you look at an IAB, it's interesting to see who the contributors are. One, to validate the information and what you're accepting and adopting, but also then to go back to identify those individuals with strong voices in the industry. And again, different people will agree and disagree. And I think it's good to get a flavor of the different information to make your own mind up. If everything was vanilla and easy, we wouldn't have so many companies. But I think with all those different dissenting voices, I think the key thing is that when you get best-in-class players like ourselves from a mobile lens or from Mark's lens with Adelaide, you're going to have to get the best-in-class players together to kind of make something happen that hasn't already.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for joining us on this episode, The Power of Attention Metrics and Mobile Advertising. A special shout out to InMobi for sponsoring the series, and to Mark and Richard, our two guests today. Stay tuned for more content coming soon from the Advertising Forum.
Thanks, everybody.